It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Tufts University head men's ice hockey coach, Coach Patrick Norton. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you?
I'm
Thanks for
doing.
having me on.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college men's ice hockey?
I think that I always had an interest in coaching, even from being a little kid. My dad coached football and hockey, and coached myself and my brothers in a lot of sports growing up. And I certainly remember driving car rides home where I would, put together lines and put together who I thought should be playing with who, and lineups were always something that was running through my head. And so I think even from a young age, I knew I wanted to get into coaching. And then when I got done playing, I still wanted to be involved in the sport, and was fortunate to have an opportunity to do so with Mike McShane at Norwich University, who was also a UNH alum. And so, he was close with Richard Umili, who was my coach in college, and I think that certainly helped me, get started and get that first job with Coach McShane.
What was that like, obviously, going to UNH and playing collegiate ice hockey for them?
It was a tremendous experience. I certainly was not an impact player by any stretch of the imagination. I think I probably played 30 something games, but I could tell you a little bit about every one of them. The atmosphere was always fantastic. I was fortunate enough to play with some really some great players, and fortunate to play against some great players. Um, Made a lot of good friendships and a lot of connections through my days at UNH, and I definitely would not have traded those for anything.
What was that experience like getting to put on that UNH jersey?
As a New Hampshire kid, that was my father had been the assistant coach at UNH in the early '70s. I I I sort of spent my younger childhood days around UNH. Uh, my dad was a broadcaster for New England Sports Network and Channel 11, originally with Channel 11 when they used to broadcast the games around the local area. So I would go with him to the UNH games. I got to know the coaches and some of the players as a little kid. So for me, as a kid who grew up in New Hampshire, to put on that UNH jersey was really something special, something that I really never thought I would be able to do. Um, Even every year that I was there, it was I sort of felt lucky that I was able to wear the blue and the white. It was an honor, I think, for any kid that's in state to play for their state university. I think is pretty special.
How was that experience like playing for your state university along with playing with for your dad's alma mater?
Well, my dad went to Rutgers, so he did not go to UNH, but back in the day, he was hired as a football coach at UNH, and a little like they do still now in some of the prep schools, you're hired as a coach for one sport, but then they ask you to do something else. And so he was thrown into being a hockey coach, and he didn't have a ton of experience in hockey, but he worked for Charlie Holt. So I never got to play for, or he it wasn't his alma mater, but for me to be able to play at a university that I grew up around and that I grew up watching and that I grew up a fan of, and I knew older guys above me who had played there. It was pretty much a dream come true. That was always where I wanted to play, and I was lucky enough to have a chance to do that.
How was that feeling like playing in that atmosphere of UNH, that legendary atmosphere?
That was great. It's something special. I think it was even when I started playing there. We played in the old Snively Arena, which has since been converted into the fitness center. But Snively, they had the Theta Chi brothers, Theta Chi fraternity would run the cheers, and they were very, very knowledgeable. They were some of the best fans in the country. We still, I think, still I think UNH has some of the best fans in the country. But they had the original fish that was thrown out for games. They would determine the fish size by who we were playing. So if you played UMaine, who was a huge rivalry at the time, they'd throw out a 40-pound wolffish, and if we were playing, somebody that they deemed a weaker opponent, you might see a minnow be thrown out, or you might see a can of tuna fish, or something along those lines. But they knew when it was your first game. They were that knowledgeable. So my first home game that I ever played, as soon as I stepped on the ice, the student section was chanting my name, and they did it for all of the freshmen during that time. So really, really cool experience, and one that you remember forever. Yeah, no question.
As a player, what was that like playing against UMaine?
Back when I was at UMaine was in their heyday. That was when they had their national championships, and when Sean Walsh was there, and Paul Correa, and Jim Montgomery, and Imes, and Ingraham, and the Blair Allison, Blair Marsh, Garth Snow. For any Maine alumni, I apologize that I'm forgetting probably a large number of great players there, but they were in their heyday. So we were fortunate that we won a few times against them, but they were. I mean, one of those seasons was their 42 1-2 years, so they were a powerhouse back in those days. So it wasn't always that fun.
Coming out of college, what was it like getting started in coaching for the first time at Norwich University?
I would say that it was a little overwhelming coming out of the gates. I think you're very close in age to the players, so you still have that connection to wanting to play, and still have that feeling that maybe you miss it, a lot when you first stop. And then I think the travel and the recruiting, and I think sort of being in the real world all of a sudden, you go from having friends that are all in their 20s to now all of a sudden having friends and coworkers that are in their 40s, 50s, even 60s, when you're still in your your mid 20s. It's for anybody that joins the real world, I think it's a culture shock to leave college. I think I certainly felt that. And then when you're traveling and you're on the road recruiting and you're new to it, you don't know many people, you don't really know the ways of how, you don't really know the ins and outs of it. So I think being on the road a lot was certainly an adjustment, and wasn't something I think in my first year I was really ready for. Now I love it. I'm not sure I loved it that much the first year I did it.
What was your experience like, obviously, getting to go to Vermont University to become the assistant coach there?
So that was a little bit different. I think I came into University of Vermont having been fortunate enough to be a part of a national championship team at Norwich, of which a significant number of those players were kids that I had recruited. And then I went to UVM after they had been involved in a hazing scandal that had canceled their season. So they were just coming back from that season being canceled. And I think I was a little cocky, probably a little arrogant, and I felt like I could come in and solve all the problems of the world. And I don't think I really understood the challenges that UVM faced at the moment that I arrived there. And so I think it was a real learning experience. It was definitely a shock from what I had been going through at Norwich, where we were winning all the time, to being on a program that was trying to find its identity after having had a really tough year prior to my arrival.
Of course, leaving Vermont, what was that like going to Northeastern University?
So again, I loved being a little bit back in the city again. I really loved working for Bruce Crowder, the guy that I actually learned a lot from, and probably didn't appreciate it as much when I was there as I did after I left was really Jamie Rice, who's the head coach and has done a fantastic job at Babson College. But Jamie was there when I was there, and I really learned a lot from Jamie in terms of I got a lot of his ideas. He had a very strong hockey mind. Um, I thought he was I thought he had a different perspective on things. So I felt like I learned a lot from Jamie during that time. I also learned a lot from Coach Crowder, and I think being in Hockey East and playing in Boston and in again in a program that was trying to find its identity again at that time, I think was a real good learning experience for me.
How is that like obviously getting to coach in a competitive hockey conference like Hockey East?
That was a lot like the NESCAC. It was a really tough. I mean, you look at Hockey East now, from top to bottom. There is no night off. There's no automatic points. It's a challenging league. The league that we play in now, the NESCAC, is the same way. Every single night is a really tough night in the league, and that's very much the way it was in Hockey East. We had a very good team. We started off, I don't know the exact record, but we started off, without a single win. I think we were 0-11 overall, and I don't know what we were in Hockey East. But then we sort of found our stride, and we had a great finish. We almost made the playoffs. I think we were 12-5-7 or 12-7-5 the second part of the season, or the last 2/3 of the season. But yeah, it's a really tough league. The only really good part about it is that you're in your, as far as the competition is great, but you're in your own bed every night. So from a travel standpoint, that was great.
What was that transition like from going from college hockey to then high school hockey and coaching on the high school level?
So the coaching piece of it, I think, was very similar. I asked a lot of people before I took the job at Tilton. Uh, I got a lot of advice from people that I trusted, and everybody that I talked to felt like getting head coaching experience was extremely important and was going to be valuable. So when I got to prep school, the coaching piece of it, the working with the players, the working with the athletes, the on ice, the games, um, there wasn't a lot of difference. You're still competitive no matter what level it is. You still have that fire no matter what level it is. And I think at times those guys are ready to absorb what you're bringing to the table in terms of teaching and coaching. Um, it was definitely different in terms of responsibilities. You were doing dorm duty, you were working in admissions, you were golf coach, you were weekend travel, you were taking kids that were not athletes on weekend trips. There was a lot of things that go with prep school that were very different than when you're coaching college hockey. You're really focusing on your program and what you're doing. When you're at prep school, you're really involved in the whole life of the campus. It's really a community, and you really are a big, an invested part of that community. So that part of it was a little different to get used to, and a little. Fortunately, I'd been to prep school. I'd gone to prep school, so I had a little idea. But it was still a big adjustment in terms of being a part of a community like that.
During that time, what was that like learning as a head coach on the prep school level to then make that jump to go back onto the college level to become a head coach?
So I think there were a lot of things that I learned at prep school early on in terms of handling situations and dealing with the players, and dealing with parents, and dealing with admissions offices and financial aid and the recruiting process. A lot of things that are you still do here in college. I think there were a lot of things that I felt right out of the gates I did pretty well, and there were a lot of things that I felt through trial and error I continued to get better at. Um, and I felt it was from start to finish, there was a learning curve. I think that um, I feel like anytime you go to a place, you're trying to leave the program better than when you found it. And I feel like we did a really good job. I feel like I did a good job at Tilton at bringing it to a healthy place, and leaving it for the next guy after me, uh, to have more success, which was the ultimate goal.
How is that like obviously getting that experience on learning how to run a high school program to then help you to when you took over this job to run a college program?
So I think the biggest things were learning how to run a practice and how to create pace and tempo, and sort of finding who you are as a head coach. Um, I think you learn from a lot of guys, and I was fortunate enough to learn from a lot of coaches through my experiences both in playing and my initial career in coaching. And I think you try to I think people try to emulate when they leave Bill Belichick. I think they try to be Bill Belichick, but they can't. Sometimes it takes them a while to figure out that they can take what they learned from Bill Belichick and use it within their own personality and figure out who they are. I think for me, I learned from Chris Serino and Mike McShane and Richard Umili and Mike Gilligan and Bruce Crowder and Jamie Rice and Damian DeJulian. And I think within all of those things, you have to pick out the stuff that you like and the things that you think you think are beneficial to a winning program, and then you pick away the things you're not so crazy about, and then somehow you have to figure out how to make it all your own and have it come from an honest place that's true to who you are. And I think probably early on, in coaching prep school, I tried to be maybe too much like Coach McShane, and then as I got further along in those 11 years, I think I felt like I did a better job of figuring out how to be more me within the things that I believed in.
What was that feeling like when you got that head coaching job at Tufts University to become the next head coach?
So that was extremely exciting. I felt like I had always wanted to get back into college coaching. I felt like I had, my goal was to become a Division III head coach. So I when I had the opportunity to take the job here at Tufts, it was extremely exciting. And again, a little like being at UNH, it was one of those situations where kind of a dream come true. And I felt like there were enough resources here at Tufts for us to be successful and for us to build a program here that people could be proud of. So in all of those ways, I was extremely excited to. And again, I love Boston. I love the city. So it was exciting to be able to come back and be in this area again.
What was that feeling like when you became the next head coach and got started in your journey?
Again, extremely exciting. I think I would say this. I didn't realize, sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you start to see what your challenges are. And I think I probably was a little bit more naive to what some of our challenges, some of the challenges that we face on a day-to-day, day-to-day experience here at Tufts. But very excited, very honored, very proud to be. This is a great location. It's a tremendous university. It's a school where the athletic programs have all been strong and are all consistently strong, and so you feel like there's uh, an obligation to help build your program to the level that some of the other programs at your university are. So certainly some challenges, certainly a feeling that you got to continue to push the program forward. But it's super exciting to be the head coach here at Tufts.
As a head men's ice hockey coach, what has the culture been like that you've built?
So I think that I would tell you that we're still trying to build it. I think we had, because of COVID and we had a couple of classes that were very, very light in terms of numbers. I think that we started our journey, and then I think for a little bit of for a couple of years we were trying to rebuild ourselves and reinvent where we were. And I think we're at a point right now where we're really trying to create a culture of high compete, of guys that want to be in the trenches all the time. We play in a really small rink. That's a challenging facility, so we're trying to build a team that fits that facility and they can win there. But we also play in a lot of other competitive buildings and competitive barns. So some with different size ice surfaces. So you got to be able to play on the road as well. And we wanted to, we're trying to build a team that has leadership from within, and where the players are driving the engine. And I think we're in a much better place than we were 3-4 years ago in terms of the health of the program and having those that culture starting to take form and take shape. But we're still in process of really solidifying what we want to be and where we want to be.
As a head coach, what does a typical game day look like for you?
So typically for us on game days, usually we do most of our work on the days prior to. So typically on a Friday, we usually it's usually a pretty light day. We'll typically, as coaches, get together and have some discussion of what we want to do in terms of our pregame meetings and who we want to speak when, what our message is going to be to the guys. But it's usually a pretty relaxed, pretty light day. I'll go to the grocery store and pick up some between period snacks and some things pregame for the guys so that they have some things to gain a little energy between periods. But usually game days are pretty light. Once we get to the rink, there's usually a set time where I'll let my assistant coaches get in, talk to the team about a couple of specific things. Try not to weigh them down with too much information. And then once we get dropping the puck, it's pretty much like a snowball going downhill. You just kind of let it roll.
Of course, once that puck drops, what is that like as a head coach, helping lead your team to hopefully win that ice match?
So obviously the adrenaline's going. You're excited. It brings you a little bit back. You wish you were out there playing, I think, to some days. For me, I think the most important part of it is to try and make sure that I'm maintaining my composure and staying calm throughout. Try not to be too much of a cheerleader. Excuse me. Try not to coach too much during the game. Because emotions are high and guys are trying to play, and you make a mistake, you make a good play, you come back to the bench, and at that point nobody really wants to hear from me. So I think trying to stay observant and just be a presence is what I try to do. I let my assistant coaches do a lot of the line stuff and making sure that they're getting the right players and the right personnel out. And then between periods, we'll sit down and I'll talk about what I saw and some of the things that I think we need to adjust. I'll listen to those guys and my staff, and we'll come up with a game plan, and we'll have, three little quick bullet points that we want to give the guys between periods to make adjustments. And then hopefully those adjustments obviously work and lead to success moving forward in the game.
What does that game day atmosphere look like on your home ice?
So we have an off-campus facility, but we do pretty well, particularly on Friday nights for our league. Our guys do a great job on campus and in the community of supporting other programs and supporting other athletes and teams on campus. And so I think a lot of the teams and programs on campus really do a great job of coming out and coming to our games and supporting our team as well. We're also, because we're located just outside of Boston, we get a lot of visiting fans, and it's an easy track for a lot of our parents and a lot of people to come to our games. So I think our location helps us. So we have a really good environment for our games, and I think the kids, even though we're off campus, I think the players appreciate that we have a pretty loyal following.
Of course, as a head coach, what is that like, obviously having an off-campus ice home field?
Yeah, so it presents some challenges. Getting the guys over there, trying to make things as efficient as possible, trying to make sure that the guys are back and forth in a timely enough fashion to maintain their studies and to find that balance of it's probably about a 20-minute drive. So we're always trying to make sure that we are getting done what we need to get done, while also taking the academic workload that our players, that our student athletes have, into consideration, and trying to do things as efficiently as we can. I think that's the number one thing that we look to with the off-campus facility, and we're always trying to make that better, and make it a better experience for the guys.
Who are some of the teams that you face each week in your conference?
So we are a member of the New England Small Athletic Conference, uh, New England Small Schools Athletic Conference, small collegiate, whatever it is, the NESCAC. I ought to know that off the top of my head, but it's essentially the Little Ivy. So it's some of the best academic schools in the country. So it's Amherst, it's Williams, it's Bowdoin, it's Colby, it's Trinity, it's Wesleyan, it's Tufts, it's Connecticut College, it's Hamilton. We don't play Bates, but Bates is in the league as well. They are not there. They play in other sports, but not in hockey. So it's an extremely competitive academic league. It's also top to bottom, as strong a league as there is in Division III in terms of the parity within all the teams.
What's that like, obviously, getting to play against those teams like Colby?
It's great. Again, you're playing some historically great programs. Even though they're at the Division III level, some of the programs we play at, are pretty well known throughout the country, and have had tremendous hockey traditions. And I think it's exciting to play in places and play against other schools that care about hockey, and that hockey is an important part of the university's identity and culture. So I think it's a great league to play in, and it's definitely exciting every single night.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to play college hockey?
Yeah. So the first thing we need to figure out is whether or not the student athletes are at an academic level that we can work with them. So we need to, when we go to a game, we're talking with the coaches ahead of time, and we're trying to figure out who, most of the time they know who the students are. So we do our due diligence and try to figure out who are the high end students that are potential candidates for our program. And then from there, we're looking probably to bring in about 6 to 8 players every year. So you've got to narrow that list of those, potential academic candidates, and kind of whittle that down through, doing your homework and finding out whether or not they're fits for your school, fits for your program. They got to decide whether or not your program is a fit for them. You got to be able to obviously get them accepted. There's a lot of moving pieces that go with it, but you're trying to build a relationship with those kids, particularly my assistant coaches, trying to build a relationship with those student athletes so that they want to be a part of your program, they want to be a part of your university, and they want to be, they want to wear the brown and blue. So it's really about building relationships. I think that's the most important thing in
As a
recruiting.
head, as a head coach, what are some of the things that you look at in those prospective student athletes?
Absolutely. So the first thing we try to find out is we look for is do they have a motor, and do they compete? What's their compete level like? Are you trying to do you have to, because compete level is something that, again, it's a lot easier to tame guys that play hard than, to reel them in, than it is to get somebody who struggles with that compete and to try and pull it out of them. So compete level is one of the first things that we look at. I think the second thing that we look at is hockey IQ, and how, what the players' decisions are with the puck, and what they do without the puck. I think that's extremely important. And then character. For us, we try to do as much homework as we can on the family, the person, the player, the human being, to make sure that we have good kids and good people, not just on campus, but in our locker room. If you can bring in as many good kids and good people to your team, I think that eventually leads to camaraderie, which leads to success. So who you are as a person is as important as anything you do as a player.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing those players fall in love with your campus when going on that official visit?
That is always a really, I think for us, I think it's a really special experience. I think that Tufts is a fantastic campus. We have of a campus. We have we have plenty of green areas and quads and trees and places to hang out and relax. And during a beautiful spring or summer, or warm day in the fall, there's plenty of places for the guys, for the student athletes and the students to be outside. Um, but yet we are just outside of Boston, so you have all the amenities that the city can provide you. We have the T line that's just outside the building that I'm sitting in right now, the Green Line that is only 5 or 6 stops from North Station and TD Garden. There's a lot of colleges and universities in the area, so many of our players and many of our students have friends that go to other schools. There's just a lot of stuff to do in this area and in this region. We're 17 minutes away with no traffic from the airport. So parents that have, or kids who have parents that live, in states that are a little further away, it's easy access to getting to campus. So I think all of those things, when kids come in and they think it's a city school and they walk around campus for the first time and they see that it's actually a beautiful campus within the city, I think their eyes light up, and they never realized exactly, they didn't know prior to arriving what the campus looked like and all that Tufts has to offer. So I think that's always exciting when you see a kid visit the school for the first time.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing them put on that Tufts jersey for the first time and represent that blue jersey?
I think I think having been here for a while now and understanding what athletics means to our alumni and to Tufts, I think seeing the kids put on the jersey for the first time and hoping that they have an understanding of who they're representing, themselves, their parents, but also, all of the players and student athletes that have come before them, not just as hockey players, but as athletes that have attended the school. You're representing a lot of people when you throw on that Tufts jersey. And I think that, it's exciting to see kids play their first college hockey game. I think under any circumstances, it's a great experience. But when they're putting on a jersey that represents so much to so many people, I think that's pretty special, pretty unique.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing those tough players, those seniors, go on and leave the program to go on to the NHL or the ECHL?
So for us, most of our guys do not. I don't think we've had anybody get to the NHL. Most of our guys, fortunately, we have, because of the academics of Tufts, a lot of our guys will go on to have tremendous careers professionally in terms of other fields outside of hockey. Excuse me. We have a number of guys that have gone on and played the East Coast League, the Southern Professional League, the SPHL. A lot of our guys would go over and spend a year or two in Europe and play over there. So there are opportunities for our guys to play for a few years afterwards if they want to do it. Mason Poldy was a goalie who had a very good career playing in the minor leagues, minor pros. We had some guys that have gone over to play in France and Germany. So you can continue to get a good experience playing hockey. Not many NHL guys. When I was at UVM and Northeastern, we had some guys, and even at Norwich, Keith O'Coin went on to play in the National Hockey League. We had Patrick Sharp at UVM, who went and had a tremendous NHL career, and we've had some great players. I've been fortunate enough to coach some great players over my time. That's for sure.
What are some of your future plans moving forward for the program?
So I think for us, our goal is to continue to develop our culture and have that become. I think right now, having a consistency of classes that are coming in and continuing to build the culture that we put into place these last couple of years, I think is extremely important. I think our goal is to win a league championship. I think that's the goal of the first thing you have to do here at Tufts is to win a league championship. I think after that, you worry about competing nationally. But I think for us, the first goal is to host a league championship tournament and to host at least a first round game, and then to give ourselves an opportunity to win an NESCAC championship. I think that's our goal first and foremost. Once we do that, everything else is gravy. But to get an NESCAC title is really special for this program.
What advice would you give those high school athletes that are looking to play college men's ice hockey?
So I'd say the biggest piece of advice I would give the guys is you never know who's recruiting you, you never know who's coming in the building, and you never know who's watching you. So I would say that anytime you make the decision to play a game or to lace them up or to play in a summer league or to play at a camp or a showcase or excuse me, even your regular season games, play every game like it's game 7 of the Stanley Cup, because it only takes one guy walking in to like you to get you recruited at a Division 1 program or a Division 3 program, and it only takes one game sometimes for guys to never come back and see you play again. So there's a lot more hockey players are out there than there are coaches and places for these guys to play. And so whenever you lace them up, you should be trying to be true to your identity as a player and put your best foot forward as far as attitude, effort, compete level, all of those different things. And I think that would be my biggest piece of advice to any player that's coming up through the ranks, is to just be ready to play every time. Because you just never know who's going to walk into the building and what opportunities might be presented to you, and you just don't want to miss those.
What advice would you give those freshmen that are entering college ice hockey for the first time?
Yeah, be patient. You're playing against older, stronger players, and no matter what league you played in, you're a freshman, and is still a freshman. Is still a freshman, whether you're a prep school player or whether you've played juniors for 2 years and you've aged out. You're still a freshman. You're still playing against older, stronger guys and players that have played, several years more than you and have experience at the level. So there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be some nights off. There's going to be some days where you play really well and some days where you struggle early on. And I think the kids that are the most patient and the ones who handle the ups and downs, I think, of that first year are usually the ones who are most successful. So I think if you can be patient and just continue to try and get better every single day, I think that's the recipe for success as a first year player.
What advice would you give those seniors that are looking to go play professionally, whether it's the NHL or ECHL?
So I think for the guys that I've been lucky enough to coach that have played in the NHL or played at professional levels, I think they were always the best player at where they were. At some point, you're not the best player anymore. I remember there was a radio show on here on one of the sports network in Boston, and they were talking about a, a player that was playing AAA baseball in Pawtucket, and he couldn't quite get to the Red Sox, and it was the first time in his entire baseball career that he'd been told he wasn't good enough. And so learning that in AAA that you're not good enough can be a blow to your confidence and a blow to your ego, and I think that that's sometimes challenging. So the guys that I've been fortunate enough to play with, Mark Mowers, at UNH was a 240 something career point scorer and was a tremendous offensive talent. But one of the things that he really had a 3-zone game, and when he got to the NHL, he had a long and solid career playing as almost a third and fourth line player, because he understood how he had to be successful, how he had to play, and that he might not necessarily be a top 6 skill guy at that level, but he could still have a great NHL career. And I think the guys that have been able to adapt and play different roles and find their niche and find a style of play in the professional levels that allow them to get in the lineup have been the ones that, at least in my experience, have tended to be the most successful.
What advice would you give those coaches that are looking to get started in coaching and first starting off as an assistant coach?
So I think the first piece of advice would be, as far as recruiting goes, you are recruiting for your head coach. So you really got to know who your head coach is and what kind of players he likes, and what kind of players he coaches the best, what kind of personalities he connects with the best. And I think you obviously, as a recruiter, you like the players you like, but I think within that you have to try and figure out the guys that are the best fit for your head coach, because ultimately he's the guy that is going to be responsible for those players. And so finding that balance, I think, is extremely important. I'd say the other piece of advice would be that you don't know everything. There's a lot of guys that have 25 plus years experience, and I think sometimes 30 years, 40 years experience. I think sometimes young coaches come up a little like myself. They think they have all the answers, and then they get there and they realize suddenly that they don't. So I think being open to learning and open to new ideas, much like the head coaches usually are, I think is extremely important. And know that you got a lot to learn and a lot of experience to gain. I think those would be the two biggest things that I would advise anybody that's trying to get into the coaching profession, the assistant coaching profession.
What advice would you give those head coaches that are looking to build their own program?
I would say that find a common rallying point, or three common words or three common areas that you feel like represent your program now and what your program aspires to be, and have that be your pillar or your pillars for your team, and try to do everything you can to build around those pillars. I think that is extremely important. And then I think, for me, it's been about trying to learn and continue to try and improve myself all the time, and know that even with as much experience as I have, things are constantly evolving and changing, and I certainly don't know everything, nor do I have all the answers to everything. So I think hiring good people and letting them take ownership of what they're good at and take ownership of certain parts of the program, I think is extremely important. And it teaches them accountability, and they have to be responsible for certain parts of your team. And it allows you to be sort of a GM and sit back and let them do the things they're good at. You can learn as well. So if you hire good people around you, you're going to have I think you're going to have success.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at and your program at on social media?
You had to ask me that. Because I am not the one who handles social media. We have some people that do that. If you just get on the Tufts athletics website and Google Tufts University ice hockey, you'll find our Instagram. You'll find Twitter. We have an alumni Instagram as well. So those are sort of the two focal points that we do a lot with Instagram, and our website is directly connected to the university website. So there's lots of articles, and our athletic communications department does a tremendous job with all of our programs. So get a lot of good insight there as well.
Thank you again, Coach Patrick Norton, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as the Tufts head men's ice hockey coach.
Thanks a lot, Brandon. I appreciate you having me, and good luck with the sports talk.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Patrick Norton, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks, Brandon.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.